Let me tell you a little anecdote. A few days ago, a lady said to me in Los Angeles, my husband died a year ago, and he shared with me a great lesson. On his deathbed, he said to me, come close. I want to tell you something. Listen very carefully. I can only say this once. I don't have much strength left. She said, I'm listening, darling. What is it? He said, remember this always. Each morning, the moment you take your head off the pillow, you have all you need.
If we look at the mind as an iceberg, and the tip of the iceberg is what's above the surface, that's the conscious mind, that's the mind of choice, that's the action mind. What's below the surface, and that's most of the iceberg, right? That's the subconscious mind, like a submarine. You don't know it's there, but it's there, unless it surfaces.
Well, most of us say we want X. I want a new car. I want a fancy house. I want inner peace. I want a loving relationship. And then we start to go out into our world and we say, I will earn the right. And you start working away at life. And you're using your mind a lot and you're working at everything, and things get in the way. Life seems to throw curves at you.
You can think of everyone in this world that you know as dragging a whole bunch of suitcases behind them. The emotion code is a way to cut loose all those suitcases, all those steamer trunks, all that baggage that you've been carrying around all your life. The end result of that is that you become light and you become able to manifest into the world what you're supposed to be able to manifest. Imagine living in a world where everyone is actually manifesting from their heart into the world their perfect creation that is inside each of them. That's where we're going.
The way I understand emotions are that when we have emotions, oftentimes we don't express our emotions. And the good emotions we do express, but the negative or the painful emotions, they get trapped in our body. And we can become sick from those emotions. And the way I understand it is like a glass of water, where you add water, you continue to add water. But when we don't express them, when we don't give it energy and we don't work through our stuff, then ultimately it's going to spill over into a disease or an illness or something that manifests as a result of what we haven't worked on.
I am absolutely convinced that it is our trapped emotions and traumas and anxieties and unprocessed life experiences that we hold in our nervous system are the source of everything that ails us.
One of the most profound things in my life has been able to share ancient wisdom that I came across just as a young guy traveling around the world and fascinated by communities that pretty much live off the grid, and they're long-lived, they're healthy, they're happy. And it always bothered me, how can they be that way without hospitals and doctors and miracle supplements and pills and capsules? They don't have any of that.
What I've come to understand is at the core of every symptom, every stress, every dis-ease pattern that we experience, whether it be physical, whether it be emotional, are emotions, memories that are buried in our subconscious mind. And when these are triggered, our body reacts. It's called a maladaptive stress reaction. And what it means is that we're not able to adapt in the present moment, here and now. And what happens is our body reacts as if something from the past is going on right now.
Now, when we react to conditions in our life, there is an emotional component that begins to create chemistry in our bodies because the body is interpreting an emergency situation. Now, all organisms in nature are designed for short-term stress. Gazelle gets chased by a lion, 15 minutes later it goes back to grazing and everything returns back to balance. Human beings are a little different. We can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. We can think about some past bitter memory that's tattooed in the recesses of our gray matter, and like magic, it comes to life, and in that moment, it's real.
Whenever you see something, because the brain works in pictures, there's a response to that image of the sensory impact. If you hear a sound that sounds dangerous, your body, your brain will create an emotional molecule to get you to respond to that.
And as a result, our heart rate increases, our immune system suppresses, we become more anxious because we're not in our fullest potential in the moment. At the core of every symptom, stress, and disease are emotions and memories, traumatic perceptions that are buried in our subconscious mind.
You grab him by the balls. You take control of the situation. Otherwise, you and I are not working. You pitch me. Whoa!
So how are all of these thoughts and feelings, conscious and both unconscious, contributing to the challenges we're having in our physical body? When we have experiences in our lives that overwhelmed us emotionally or brought us a lot of pain, what we're finding is that there are these protective mechanisms that help us to overcome and survive these experiences. These protective mechanisms actually take these experiences and suppress them, not just in our mind, but in our body. And the evidence of that suppression is muscular tension. First of all, to understand how the emotion code works, you have to understand that the human body is really nothing but energy. If you look at your hand, for example, that hand looks pretty solid. But if you were to magnify that hand 1,000,000 times, you'd be looking face to face with a single individual atom. And if you could look into that atom, you'd see there's really nothing in there but empty space and infinitesimally tiny energies zipping around at the speed of light. And that's really what we are. We're beings of pure energy. We are composed of all these countless energies, tiny energies, that are all flying in this close formation, giving us this experience that we're having in this world.
Emotion means energy movement. And it's our thoughts that create our emotions. It's our emotions that create our behaviors.
So when a person has a conflict, that creates neural pathways in our brain. This amazing cutting-edge doctor, Dr. Hammer, was able to map out the brain. When you look at a non-contrast CAT scan, you can see a dot with concentric rings, like a bullseye. And what he found is that if a person had testicular cancer or ovarian cancer, that spot would be at the same location in the brain for all of the people. And he would ask the people, hey, what did you just experience? And they would talk about loss of children. His premise is that the brain will download all of our emotions first.
When we feel an emotion strongly enough, what we're really feeling is a vibrational energy. Every emotion has its own specific vibrational frequency. Anger is a different emotional energy, a different frequency, a different vibration than frustration, and that's different than sadness, and they're all different. But when you're feeling an intense emotion, Your whole being can take on this vibration, and it's during those times that sometimes the energy of that emotion that you're feeling is too powerful, and that energy can become trapped and stuck in the body. And because that's all the body really is an energy field, when you distort that energy field, you eventually start to have problems, because what you're really doing is you're distorting the tissues of the body themselves. And if you distort tissue and you irritate tissue long enough, that tissue starts to have problems, and it can go through those changes that we call cancer.
One of the most amazing substances in our body is connective tissue. There's more connective tissue in our body than any other tissue. What's connective tissue? It's a protein. It consists of actually several proteins. One is collagen, the other is elastin. Collagen gives fascia strength, while elastin gives it flexibility. Literally everything in your body is surrounded and interconnected in this fabric. So your big toe is connected to your right ear through a connective tissue network. The other amazing function of connective tissue is that it's conductive of energy. So when we protect ourselves from an overwhelming emotional or physical experience, our body goes into a protective state which causes muscles to contract. The muscles contract, and then the surrounding connective tissue begins to be strained by those contractions, causing it to thicken and bond to each other and harden.
The only disease that exists in the human experience is chaos at the atomic level, which leads to chaos at the molecular level, which leads to chaos at the cellular level. And when enough cells are in chaos, you feel it as a sign or a signal of a chaos or an offense in the body. That's what the word symptom means, a sign or a signal of a chaos.
So the accumulation of suppressed emotion and stress and pain creates tensions that begin to layer upon layer and accumulate over time and begin to act upon our joints, our blood vessels, our organs. This phenomenon of contracted muscle and hardened restricted connective tissue is what's referred to as body armor.
I think it's the AMA says 80% of all health issues are stress related.
Your body is your unconscious mind. It doesn't know the difference between an experience in your life that creates an emotional response and an emotion that we fabricate by thought alone. To the body, it's believing it's in the same environmental conditions. So it's a scientific fact that the chemicals of stress dysregulate and downregulate our genes that create disease. It's a fact. So if we can turn on a stress response just by thought alone, and those chemicals can make us sick, then by very definition, our thoughts can make us sick.
So anywhere in your body where you're not only tense, but where you feel hard, is evidence of places in your body where you're storing emotion or sensation from the past.
The wisdom of thousands of years through traditional Chinese medicine, through Ayurvedic medicine, they had an understanding that we have lost in Western medicine today. They understood that specific emotions affected specific parts of the body. The kidneys carried fear and liver carries anger.
Think about people who drink. Oftentimes they overstimulate the liver and they become angry. On the other hand, the lungs produce the emotion of grief, among others. And so people who tend to have a lot of grief in their lives tend to suffer from lung issues.
We all know people that will come and tell you the same story over and over and over again. They're really suffering in that story. And what we discover is all the places where they secretly suffer in their life, where they feel that they're obliged or obligated to do certain things, that impacts the knees, where they don't feel supported or they have a worry for money, that will support the lower back, where they have difficulty in communicating or they feel that the weight of the world is on their shoulders, that affects the upper back and neck.
I want you to understand why different cultures knew. If you have a pain in your thumb, that's very significant in a very significant emotion. If you have a pain in your elbow, your shoulder, if you feel a little pain in your chest, in your hips, in your stomach, in your intestines, a lot of people don't understand anymore the connection of the entire body to the brain, and the brain seeing pictures that create emotions, which create behaviors.
They will spin in their mind this conflict over and over and over and over again. The automatic brain is responsible to keep us alive, and so what it will do is it will download into a specific body part so the person can continue to function. When it first happens, it's very clear with a dot and concentric rings around it. The bigger the conflict, the bigger the concentric rings. It could be a testicular cancer or an ovarian cancer, and that would download first into the ovarian or testicular relay in the brain and simultaneously onto the organ itself. And as a person begins to find solutions and repair, you will see that this concentric rings and the dot itself will change in how it looks.
Emotions tend to build up, and we tend to push them away as they build up because we've been taught to resist things that don't feel good instead of feel the things that don't feel good. And we look for answers, and the problem is that the answers aren't out in our world, they're inside us, because the feelings are from inside us.
When I look at the mathematics I've written and the concepts that these mathematics bring, it shows that within every proton, every subatomic particle in the nuclei of atoms is all the energy, all the information of all other atoms in the universe. So when we go inwards is when we actually connect with that oneness, with that connectivity of all things.
And we call these trapped emotions patterns, but we do experience them that way. If it's an experience that we have not completed and come back to self, we do find a way to keep repeating those experiences. And so we re-traumatize ourselves. We pick partners that create the same emotional dynamics, the same physiological disabilities, because our energy is not flowing.
One of the most amazing discoveries is the discovery that 90% of our energy is being used to suppress energy from our past. And when you can get access to that suppressed energy and release it, all the energy we're using to suppress, you get back.
Because your body is recreating itself all the time. Literally, this is your story. Your biology is your biography. And what we want is we want to get all the stuff out of the cells. We want the new cell, when it goes over to replicate, to come over to this guy, to the new cell that's being created, and say, I've got nothing.
Well, you know, during the last 10 years that I was in practice, I was working with some of the sickest people on the planet, people who had been told that there was no cure for them, people who were suffering from things like cancer or chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, lupus, and other diseases. What I found was that the subconscious mind absolutely holds the key to understanding the true underlying reasons why those people were sick.
Now, our subconscious mind from conception to puberty, primarily conception to 7 years of age, is programmed with emotions, memories.
From the beginning of your birth, you start encoding the world in good experiences and bad experiences, and the unconscious mind holds this and stores it and makes it real to your conscious mind later on in life. We're successfully producing whatever it is we produce. If you're depressed, you're doing something correctly inside your mind. If you have pain inside your mind, there's a resource to help create and manifest it in a belief system.
We're often taught, you know, starting at an early age, you know, you can have a child who's crying and they're distracting everyone, and what do the parents do? They say, you know, stop. You know, be quiet, shut that down. Men really have a lot of difficulty because they haven't been allowed to feel their emotions. You know, there's many sayings, you know, big boys don't cry. So you will have a strong experience with a lot of emotion, but then it gets shut down. And when that happens, it gets stuck in the body. And that is how disease gets created. That's how energy drains from us. That is how we become disconnected. And really, Western medicine really wants to just go in and cut things out and call it a day. But what happens is what created that cancer, that disease in the first place, is still in the cells.
Have you ever noticed that when you have a headache, If you focus on the headache, it gets worse and it amplifies and your emotions get involved. And now you're in total chaos and you think you need some kind of medical drug to kill the pain. That doesn't cure anything. That's a neurotoxin and it just blocks the electric signal. Get to the cause. What is the negative source, the toxic emotion and/or the toxicity of something that you're eating and drinking that's also affecting your emotions in a negative way? Detox it, clear it.
What I have found is that 90% of all the pain that we experience is due to trapped emotions, to emotional baggage. I think that this is really the elephant in the living room in Western medicine that we are missing completely. When people are in pain in Western medicine, we give them drugs to suppress that pain. When people have diseases, we give them medications to suppress the symptoms of those diseases, when in reality, those symptoms are the body crying out, telling us there's something wrong here. And the single biggest imbalance that we suffer from is emotional baggage, our trapped emotions, those energies that stay with us after these traumatic emotional events that we suffer from.
And so what happens in today's world, because of what we have set up that we call civilized society, so many of the things that are pushed upon the masses create negative emotional molecules. Once they're formed, they're real.
We live in the most toxic time on the planet. We are all flooded. We are flooded with environmental toxicity, heavy metals or chemicals or pesticides that are sprayed on our food. Negative emotions will be in your cells, and it's almost like they seal the toxicity in.
And you can't even get them out of the body unless you know how to. It's important we understand how to remove negative emotional molecules and restore them with positive emotional molecules. That's the very foundation of health, life, and longevity.
I look at every symptom as a conversation. That there's nothing that happens in the body. There is actually nothing that happens in our life by coincidence. We are not made wrong. We're not broken. We're not missing anything. That every so-called problem of the body is a portal.
Everyone knows someone that is in pain, and everyone knows someone that is dealing with depression or anxiety or self-sabotage in some way. Many of us know someone who's dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, and it is these emotional energies, these invisible energies, that are the underlying cause of all of these things, in my experience.
We find that people that have extra weight, there's a reason. It's not necessarily about what the person is eating. Of course, that might contribute to it, but more than that, it's the emotions connected with what the person is experiencing in their life. So often, it's a person wanting to show up, to exist for people in their life, in their world, and they feel small. They feel like they're this big in response to everything that's going on. And so their body responds in weight, in packing it on and being bigger in their world.
So I'm really also of the belief that though trapped emotions are the source of everything that causes us difficulty in life and keeps us from being in our divine nature, I'm also a great believer that it's not that difficult to begin to move this energy once we are aware that that's what's trying to happen.
If we allow ourselves into those feelings instead of resisting them, things begin to change. But therein lies the rub, how to get in. And the easiest way in that I've found through 40 or 50 years of searching is through feeling.
Our body is just waiting for that magic moment when we begin to allow ourselves to come out of that survival state. And being able to open and be vulnerable to feeling again is the first start of healing our hearts and getting back to our joy.
Because if you go down through the layers of those emotions, underneath at the very bottom is your true nature, is your peaceful self, your joyous, your playful, your connected self. We see someone who's happy and joyful all the time and we're like, what's wrong with them? Well, they're really in their natural state.
We need to follow the first principle of success that says, think of what you want, not what you don't want. Another thing, if you keep on doing what you're doing, you're going to keep on getting what you're getting.
And if we allow those chemicals, those emotions, to last for hours or days, that's called a mood. Now, if we keep the same emotional reaction, the same refractory period, lasting for weeks or months, that's called a temperament. So you would say, why does that person have such an angry temperament? You say, I don't know. Why are you so angry? The person says, well, I had this experience 9 months ago, and I'm living by the same emotional reaction. Now, if we keep those same refractory periods running for years on end, that's called a personality trait. So then it makes sense then, in order to change our personality or change some aspect of ourself, we have to look at the emotions that we've memorized that literally are stored in the body.
So often, people think that they have forgiven people, and they haven't, because their body is expressing their unforgiveness through liver issues or pain or different things like that. And so then there's no energy to begin to live life until we can resolve our issue, we can resolve our problem.
We understand that the power of the mind is proven scientifically that it can heal itself over and over again. And oftentimes you hear a doctor or researcher saying, well, with a lemon in their mouth, well, you know, this placebo effect is ruining our good research. The placebo effect is proving that the mind can heal itself in spite of the sugar pill or the fake operation. Now, the nocebo effect is exactly the opposite. Here, the nocebo effect is they're getting the right drug, the right surgery, and yet they don't heal. And yet both of these people are doing exactly the same thing, but looking in different directions. They're using the universal pattern of belief or creation. And here's the interesting thing. Research has shown where they did two groups. One group got fake radiation. That means not even real radiation. And 1/3 of them lost their hair. It is the power of our mind, the power of belief, and the power of our inner creations to manifest and produce healing or no healing.
So what I found is that by releasing these trapped emotional energies that were invisible, I could change how people felt, and I could change people's pain level instantaneously in many cases. And I finally realized that we could get people well who had been told that there was no cure. Now, when a medical doctor tells you that there's no cure, what he really means is that you can't be cured with drugs or with surgery.
True transformation comes when we break free from the chains of those emotional addictions, when we begin to go into the operating system where those programs exist, and we begin to make transformational changes. And the side effect of true transformation is called joy. Now, that elevated emotion is a liberation of energy out of the body. And the body is freed from the past, and it moves into the present moment, and we begin to experience the second type of emotion. We begin to feel joy, goodwill, gratitude.
It's really true that as we start to release emotions, it is like peeling off the layers of an onion. Some of those may have occurred when they were a child. Some of those may have happened during their divorce or during their working years or during college or high school. And eventually we are able to get to a point where we no longer have those trapped emotions, where the body is clear of those. And at that point, it's like stepping out of the old skin that we've been carrying all these years, and we step out of that and we become this person that we were really intended to be in this world. And that's what this is about, and that's why this is so powerful.
So many women are being told, if you haven't started to have children past a certain age, it's not going to happen. And I truly believe that that is a belief, that yes, you do get to a point where, you know, things do shut down. A lot of women actually they've had miscarriages, they've had abortions, they've had sexual abuse, and this whole area, you know, their female organs have the emotional debris stored in there, and they're unable to conceive. You clear that out, and then you've got babies. You can. I had a client, they had done everything. They'd done all the IVF. I believe she was 44, 45. We did an emotional process. There wasn't any energetic clearing, and boom, twins. I could show you their pictures.
You know, the subconscious mind acts as a lens of perception, but even more, the subconscious mind acts as a broadcasting signal. and it broadcasts a frequency of energy that then attracts that same frequency and energy. So now let's use for an example, here I am at, I'm in my mother's womb. I'm developing in my mother's womb, and my dad is out of a job, and my mom is anxious because it's the third child that's coming around. The heartbeat and the emotions that my mom, my dad are feeling are directly influencing, like a computer being programmed and downloading information. I'm directly downloading this information, and this becomes a stored file, and that file then later in life doesn't just, sit there quiet. It's energy.
Out of the University of Utah, they are doing research on epigenetics, and they're discovering that the offspring carry this trauma for the previous generations. They did some scientific studies with mice, and they conditioned by shocking the mice to be afraid of cherry blossoms. The second and third generations of mice, just introducing the cherry blossom without the shock, their offspring were still afraid of the cherry blossoms. So this proves that there is an epigenetic link, that the mice carried the fears of their ancestors.
If a baby is born feeling unloved, unwanted, and unaccepted, then that creates a belief system. They will then grow up and go through life and attract to themselves whatever supports that belief system.
And energy is in motion. So it stays in motion, and when it gets triggered, that energy gets triggered, it broadcasts a signal that then attracts people and circumstances that give me the same experience, different face, different name, but the same kind of experience in my life today. This is patterns. The key is to begin to understand that there are emotional patterns that we carry in our life that, as a result of these emotional patterns that are in our subconscious mind, influence our relationship with money, influence our relationships with each other, influence every aspect of who we are.
You see, consciously, we don't remember much. We don't really know much consciously. We live in our conscious mind, but we don't remember what we had for breakfast yesterday. And we forget our wallet, we forget our laptop, we forget our keys, all kinds of things. The subconscious mind, however, is a holographic archiving computer that is remembering every moment of your existence, every split second of your existence. And that computer, that subconscious mind, knows exactly what's wrong with you if you're sick. It knows exactly what needs to be done to get you well. It knows exactly what trapped emotions you have, who was involved, when they occurred, everything in precise and perfect detail.
Those same emotions that are going on outside of you are going on inside of you, and your blood is pumping these chemicals of frustration, of jealousy, of anxiety, and our cells, it's so interesting, have these receptor sites, these protein receptors that bind these molecules of emotion. The amazing thing about these receptors is that these are the same receptors that bind heroin. And when you take heroin once, what are you called? An addict. Guess what? We are addicted to our emotions.
And so we find ourselves not in a happy, relaxed state. We have anxieties, we have panic attacks, we have all kinds of things going on. We're just under the gun, under pressure. We gotta get this done, we gotta get that done. It's time to like, slow down.
So when presented with this idea of healing where you're supposed to let go of the past and really open to feelings that you've suppressed and release them, people will often say, I don't know how to do that, or I'm afraid if I do that, that I might be worse off than I am now. One of the greatest models of healing are young children, especially like around 2 or 3, because they have such emotional courage and freedom and fluidity. If you look at these young children, they laugh when they're happy, they cry when they're sad, they scream when they're angry, And when they're frightened, they come to their parents and all they want to do is just be held. And when they're held, they might curl up in a little ball and maybe shake a little bit. And when they feel safe and comforted, they let their feelings out and they express them, and then they run right back out and play again and are laughing and are happy again. This is what we all have the capacity to do. We can heal ourselves of all this accumulated emotion that's been building up in our bodies, causing it to be tense and hard, affecting us, causing us pain, and depriving us of all this energy that's all locked up instead of being available to us in our present day life to do the things that we really want to do.
You know, one of the biggest questions people have, at least when they come to engage with me, is what is my purpose in life? You know, I can't get at it, I can't feel it. And the way you do that is simply fill in the blank. If I weren't afraid, I would.
So whatever you want in your body, you simply give thanks for it. You don't ask for it, because if you continually ask for something, you are saying you don't have it. If you give thanks for it, you're acknowledging that you do have it.
So where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And as we begin to decide really clearly on creating a future or creating a new destiny, the more we bring it to life.
I run into people who are depressed, and they are so depressed, and the medical drugs they're on, all you got to do is read the side effects that say they can lead to suicides, murders, all kinds. Come on.
You'll go to your general physician and you'll say, I'm having a hard time and I'm depressed and I'm exhausted, and they'll give you an antidepressant, an SSRI. Psychotropic medication literally just moves what chemicals you have around. What happens if your pharmacy's already depleted?
Do you realize the ancients knew what to do for depression? Number one, get out into the sun. The sun is healing. Number two, the colors of the plant foods of orange and yellow. If you will eat an orange and pineapple together, you watch what happens to depression. Within 72 hours, the emotional molecules being generated in the neurochemistry of the brain, jeez, it will blow you away.
There was a scientific experiment done a little ways back where they were looking to see if emotions filter our perception. So they took a group of people that were clinically depressed, and they showed them equal slides of a wedding scene and a funeral scene. And the next day they brought them back into the lab and they said to them, which were there more slides of? Were there more slides of a wedding scene or a funeral scene? And all of the clinically depressed people said, well, there were way more slides of the funeral scene. So as we begin to remove the masks or remove the lenses that block, our true greatness or our true self, we begin to see what's already always existed, but we didn't have the mind to perceive it.
The way that we can speak with the subconscious mind, this invisible part of ourself, this unseen part of ourself, is through what I call muscle reflex testing. Everybody is built on reflexes. Your eyes blink, your iris constricts, your tongue salivates, your knee jerks. We have reflexes that control every aspect of our body. And so muscle, the strength of a muscle, the ability of a muscle to lock out or give way, gives us a read when our subconscious mind is in a reactive state and when it's not, when we're in an active state, when the conscious and subconscious mind are bridged or when they're gapped. You can learn how to muscle test yourself. You can muscle test another person. You can use someone as a surrogate to work on an animal or a child or a person who's not able to do muscle testing themselves. The simple way, and I just want to show you how to muscle test so that you can really discover the emotions that are buried in your subconscious mind that haven't been fully processed in your heart, is you just keep your arm in and you imagine that you're holding a bucket and you fill that bucket up with 5 pounds of gold, and I put my hand on top and I push down. I tell this arm to hold strong and I'm looking for it to lock out. I'm looking for it to lock out. Everything gets compared to that and it locks out. Now, so many things can trigger your subconscious mind. emotionally to react. And so, you know, whether it be thinking about something, whether it be, you know, a color, a sound, something can trigger a type of conditioned response. When I even say the word love, just the word love, I get that elbow and I say hold strong, it locks out. When I say the word fear, there's an energy to that. I can actually even feel it. You can feel it when I just say it. Fear, hold strong, hold strong. And it might look like, oh, you're just doing that yourself. No, I'm not. Hold strong. And I'm going to go back to love. Love, love, love. Hold strong, it locks out.
One of the most profound proofs of this work is that it works with animals as well as people. Sometimes people might say this is due to the placebo effect, but there's no placebo effect working with animals. And the emotion code works beautifully with animals, and we have found that 90% of all their problems are also due to trapped emotions. Sometimes we find that when we're working with animals, we need to work with the owner as well, because sometimes the animal will take on the trapped emotions that the owner has, and there's a dynamic going on between the two of them that sometimes has to be addressed. One of the most amazing stories about this was a horse that I was asked to work on one day. And we work on a horse through a surrogate person typically, where we'll have one person that we will test, and we will ask questions directly of the animal and get the answers on the surrogate person's outstretched arm. And as I'm asking questions of this horse, I find that the horse has an imbalance. It had a problem with lameness. It wasn't walking correctly. And they'd had a couple of different veterinarians look at it. They couldn't figure out what was wrong, so they called me. And what I found was it had an imbalance in its hindquarters that was due to a trapped emotion. And the trapped emotion was sadness. And so I'm asking questions. And there's a crowd gathered around listening. Is this trapped emotion about another horse? No. Is it about a human? No. Is it about a dog? No. Cat? No. I'm running out of options. A bird flies overhead, and I asked, is it about a bird? And the answer that came back was yes, it was about a bird. And everyone started laughing. And I started laughing too, because it seemed so comical. But the horse's owner was there, and she said, you know what? I think I know what this is about. She said that a week before, there was a little baby bird in a nest of baby birds immediately in front of this horse's stall. And one of the baby birds fell out of the nest and fell down onto the ground and struggled for its life and died. This whole sad, tragic affair was played out immediately in front of this horse, who was powerless to help and was overwhelmed by the emotion of sadness. That's what got stuck in the horse, that emotion of sadness. We released it, they took the horse out, and it was walking perfectly from that moment.
I can do this on someone else, I can do it on myself, but that enables me never to have to guess. There's no reason to guess. In a laser-like way, we can know when you're in an emotional state of reaction so that you can process whatever emotion's going on in the moment.
Now, we go through a very short, simple process to identify a trapped emotion and to bring it to awareness, okay? So now we have here the emotion code chart. And what we're going to do is we're going to find a trapped emotion on this chart. And here's how you do it. It's very, very simple. The first question is, do I have a trapped emotion that can be released? And if the answer is yes, then you go to the emotion code chart immediately and you ask, is this trapped emotion in column A on this chart? If it's not in column A, that means it's in column B. Is this trapped emotion in column B in one of the odd rows? And if the answer is yes, then you ask, is it in row 1? No. Is it in row 3? I'm getting a yes. Strong. Is the emotion confusion? No. Is the emotion defensiveness? No. Is the emotion grief? Actually, that's strong. So that's a trapped emotion of grief that we've identified. Once that emotion is brought to the surface, we're actually able to release that trapped emotional energy by simply swiping either fingertips or a magnet over the governing meridian, which happens to run from the lip over the head back all the way down to the tailbone. Now, when we pass our fingers or a magnet over that governing meridian, what we're doing is we're actually putting energy into that meridian. Now, a meridian is a river of energy that flows just under the skin. The governing meridian is connected up with all the meridians, and that pure intention of yours passes into that meridian and releases. It goes into all the other meridians, and it releases that energy. The best analogy that I can give you for this is if you take a credit card, okay? If I take this credit card and I rub a magnet on the back of that, on that magnetic strip, that information that's encoded there is gone, and we can't use it anymore. And that's how the emotion code works. It's the same thing as just erasing that emotional energy that is stored in our body. So once you've released that emotion, the next question is to verify with the body that that was released. And so you simply ask, did I release that trapped emotion? And the answer should be yes.
You see, if all things are composed of energy, that means fear, shame, and guilt are simply forms of energy. And if we can change them, we do. So I simply use dowsing. Now, if you want to know what dowsing is, it's simply the movement of a physical object that, in my opinion, tells you what you already intuitively know, you just don't believe you know it. I'll say, why don't you check to see what is the effect of unworthiness, doubt, fear, shame, and guilt upon you. Transform all that, usually into enlightenment, check it again, and it's not there anymore. What I'm saying is we can take one energy of any type and transform it into another energy.
Where people bring touch to your physical body and begin to put their hands in the places in your body where you are holding on to past memory. When they touch you in a loving, gentle, sensitive way and bring your awareness to these places, and it starts to invite us to get conscious of these places, because most of us don't realize how much stress we're really holding on to until somebody actually touches it. And once you're connected and conscious, waiting there inside our bodies are those feelings from our past that overwhelmed us.
And as you allow yourself into those feelings, the mind becomes quiet. The feelings unwind as you let yourself into them.
And as you allow yourself to feel these energies, emotions, pain, sensations, they'll start to flow through you. And as that begins to happen, you begin to have what's called a release. And on the other side of this release is calm. There's real, true peace, as if a load's been lifted. Your body, your physical body begins to relax on a deep level. You begin to breathe easier. There's energy flowing through your body again.
It's interesting because today's physicists have confirmed the teachings of the ancient scholars, that everything is made of light. Everything is light. What happens to detox emotions is to make sure that when you start to feel a negative emotion, number one, slow down. Take a breath. Get outside. Maybe even go for a walk. Most people don't realize that if you're emotionally upset, you just don't know who you are. Shut up and go for a walk. You go out and you start walking when you're emotionally upset and negative and everything else is going on, within 3 minutes, that walking, that motion of being outside in the open air, in the sunlight, reestablishes and clears it. The liver produces what is called today anions. Most people know it as bile. The one food that has anions, and it's the only food on the face of the earth they've ever been able to study that produces it, is lemons. And so we find that these people are lacking in typically a lot of emotional joy and happiness and the positive emotions, which weakens actually the function of the liver. And the liver is tied directly to the skin. And so if you'll get your body out into the sunshine and let the yellow light of the sun shine all on your body, they know it produces emotional molecules that target the liver. Well, they call it vitamin D, but that's only one of over 1,000 nutritional components of biophotons of sunlight. They've only named one, and they know there's thousands. So here's the deal. You drink 1 cup of fresh squeezed lemon juice every day for 90 days, and because the liver goes into mitosis or cellular division and replaces itself every 90 days, if you're being toxic emotionally and even in your diet, the new liver is weaker in function and can eventually fail. If all of a sudden you're getting into the sunlight, you're drinking lemon juice, which has the anions of bile, so the liver doesn't have to produce it, it's not stressed. Within 90 days, we've had people with failed livers have 100% functional liver. within 90 days.
The main thing that epidemic, even mainstream medical doctors are checking people for vitamin D deficiency. You know, we've been taught to stay out of the sun, and so now we don't have enough vitamin D, and vitamin D is very important for your mood, it's very important for your health. And the only way to actually fix the storage unit, the only way to make new neurotransmitters is through a better diet or amino acid therapy and vitamins and minerals.
In Western medicine, they have what they call the 7 levels of neuroendocrine glands. In a lot of other cultures, they know it as the 7 chakras, the exact same levels. Those chakras, those 7 areas of the neuroendocrine systems of the body, running from the pineal in the brain, right on down through the body to the reproductive organs of the ovaries and testicles and everything in between. They had assigned anciently the colors of the rainbow moving up. And it's so interesting because it's the colors of the foods that target specifically those levels of the chakras of the neuroendocrine system and the emotions of positiveness or the emotions of negativeness in those levels. Red was a color that the ancients knew represented power and love and warmth. If you look at red and look away, you're probably going to see green. That color green, eating those foods, gets rid of the negative emotions of the color red, which is anger. Oh, you're seeing red. Yeah. If you're angry, if you're irritated, if your buttons are pushed too easy, you need to eat more green foods to clear the negative emotions. The fastest way to heal the emotions, according to the ancient wisdom, was to be able to stop eating, because foods create moods. Fast, faster, and fastest. To fast doesn't mean to starve to death. It means to strengthen, to hold fast, to hold firm. And the ancients knew that. There's not one animal on the face of this earth, if it's sick or injured in any way, will eat. Even cats and dogs, they'll eat grass to make themselves puke and throw up to get rid of everything. And then they will never eat again until they know their body has hit a point of strengthening, of holding firm. But what if you were to fast just on water? Because water has all 7 spectral colors of the rainbow. That's why you can see a rainbow in the sky when it rains and light shines through it. A faster, not as fastest, but a faster way is to drink the bloods or the juices of colored foods. When you eat dark chocolate, the cacao or cocoa bean, the real one, not the fake stuff that's in so many products, but real dark chocolate, or hops in unfiltered organic beer, they are all of the same genus. They're all of the same family. Every one of those things is to create happiness and joy within the human experience. I've even helped people addicted to different drugs and cigarette smoking, commercial cigarettes, which are toxic. And you can use something as simple as good black licorice and macadamia nuts. You have them together, you carry them with you. Whenever you feel like having a cigarette or yet some other addiction, you eat that first. You would not believe the hundreds and hundreds of people that have overcome their chemical and emotional addictions to things. And these are the things we've got to get back to. What foods and drinks can we have to target any stress or emotions that can be negative in the human system? I love this ancient wisdom because it works.
So a lot of times if you are whole and healed and you are vibrating at a high frequency without these negative things, you can have toxicity come around, or you can have disease come near. I mean, we're constantly being exposed to the retrovirus, which is the cold virus. But what happens is if your cells are full of happy emotions, there's no place actually for that virus or for that toxicity to get into the cell.
We have several techniques that we use for letting go of the emotions that we are carrying. And one of them, which is my favorite, is the Ho'oponopono. The Ho'oponopono comes from indigenous Hawaii, and it literally means to make right. It is 4 simple phrases. I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. For instance, if a person has a breakup and they're experiencing a lot of pain and they're not even sure why that breakup happened, this is a great place to use the Ho'oponopono. So an individual would look inside and just really access that pain that they're feeling, and then they would say, I'm sorry for whatever reason this is showing up. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. It's literally taking 100% responsibility for whatever shows up in our life. You'll have a big emotional release. Sometimes you might cry. Sometimes you just feel a tremendous amount of peace. And then you let it go. I know this sounds so simple, too simple. This is frequently what I hear in the work that I do, that these tools are simple. But if you do it, you will see huge transformation begin to take place in your life.
What's so important to recognize is life is not about what happens to you. Life is all about how you choose to respond.
Many things that I believe affects people is unworthiness, doubt, fear, shame, and guilt, because these emotions have affected the human race for centuries.
The biggest cloud to our perception is fear. And we're so accustomed to it, and we're so inside the matrix of it, we consider it a normal part of our reality and one that we just at best can manage, maybe play, dodgeball with or hide and seek. But what I do is I actually help people move through that wall of fear by simply taking a breath, asking them to put their hand on their heart and focus their attention to where they are in present time, looking at what's right in front of them. And then I say, what are you afraid of? And then you do it again. If I weren't afraid, I would. And let your heart speak. And within 2 minutes, 3 minutes, they've emptied that fear. They have looked at it, vocalized it, but coming back to the moment, they see that I anchor them back in present time. Because it's not fear that actually keeps us trapped. It's hiding fear that keeps us trapped.
Then we're able to be in our body in a peaceful way. We're able to rest in our feelings and not be so much in our heads. And the neat thing about this process is that as we begin to get vulnerable again to feeling, we also begin to experience this fearless part of our nature. There's a part of us that is truly unafraid, and we need to be reminded of that part of us.
As you begin to step towards your path and purpose and reconnect and realign with that kind of spiritual integrity, the universe is stepping toward you. So there's this convergence going on until eventually you're being met by opportunities.
Let's say you're having trouble paying your bills, and you go into the feelings around paying those bills, and all of a sudden there's money to pay the bills. And it comes from places you couldn't imagine. Or maybe they just find an error in your bill. It's just really amazing how life and the illusion changes because of that.
I worked on a 33-year-old woman once who had never been in a long-term relationship. And she was an attractive woman, and I asked her, why? What happened to you that makes you feel this way? She said 8 years before, she was very deeply involved with a man that she was very much in love with, and he dumped her and broke her heart. Well, as you might imagine, that created a wall of trapped emotional negative energies around her heart, a heart wall. We cleared those emotions, and when that very last emotion was released, I felt the energy coming out of her heart. It was as if a stone had been rolled away. And I was suddenly, instantly bathed in the most beautiful, amazing energy coming out of her core. And I told her, I said, now that heart of yours is unlocked. And I said, that pure essence of who you really are is now radiating out from you, and it's filling the immensity of space. I said, you're much more likely now to be able to achieve your dream and your goal of falling in love and finding your soulmate within this next year. Now, this is not unusual. When the heart wall is taken down and those trapped emotions are released, the phone sometimes starts to ring. For women who have been hoping it would ring, it suddenly does. That energy goes out from your body, and I believe that it does fill the immensity of space, and other people tune into that, and then they're attracted to that.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you, yeah. So, you work here?
Yeah. Level 11.
This is a little bit bold, but, do you reckon we can hang out sometime? Do a coffee or a juice or something?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, should I get your phone number or?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
415 503 5933.
5933.
I'm Lauren, by the way.
Hi, Lauren, I'm Ty.
Nice to meet you. This is me.
Well, thanks, Lauren. It was nice to meet you, huh?
Nice to meet you too.
Okay.
Now, I want you to think about something. She's never been able to have a long-term relationship. Why? Because she had a heart wall. And when she would see an attractive guy, her heart would send a little butterfly of love towards that guy. But that little butterfly of love, that little love energy from her heart would have to pass through those layers of anger and resentment and depression and frustration and sorrow and sadness. And by the time it got out on the other side of that energy, it wasn't a little butterfly anymore. It was probably more like a gargoyle. And the guy on the other end would sense that and go the other direction, see? That's how this is working.
So another technique that we use is called, oddly enough, the walker from Reno. And you're thinking about some kind of conflict that you have with somebody else. And basically what you do is you just put your hands over your heart and you would say, my heart is full of love and understanding. My heart is full of love and understanding. For instance, if I'm angry or upset with my husband, I'll do it for myself. My heart is full of love and understanding, sometimes 10 or 20 times, whatever allows you to come to a place of peace. And then I'll do it for my husband. John's heart is full of understanding, or Greg's heart is full of love and understanding. Whoever your partner is, you'll want to personalize it. And then it allows us to change the perspective, to have an understanding that most of the time people are not trying to hurt us, but rather they just missed the boat or we missed the boat. And so this is the way that we can clear that.
The experiences that we've had in observing people going within and beginning to unmemorize an old emotion and then recondition the body to a new mind or to a new emotion, the body begins to get back online. It begins to heal itself. And we've seen people with MS and lupus and cancer, and we've seen their bodies literally change and the conditions return back to normal. So 5% of who we are is our conscious mind. 95% are those subconscious programs that we've memorized.
I am so thrilled to be 586 years old. Actually, what am I, 39? Something like that. Anyway, I am pain-free. I've never been to a doctor. I don't take medicines, never have. All I do is embrace the physics of nature. And I think about being happy and joyful.
What you find is you stop striving and you start living. You start being rather than working hard at it. And when that occurs, the house you want just appears. The money you need seems to work out. It's not logical. Well, the trouble is, you see, it's not logical. There is no one way that works for everybody. If there was, we'd all be doing it already.
And I will say this, if you have something inside your mind that's hurtful and painful, how long should you hold it? And I say as long as you'd like a little child to hold it. It will help you deal with life better. You'll live longer, be happier, your wrinkles won't be as deep, and you'll be a whole lot happier regardless. You'll look younger if you know how to get rid of your stress and emotions. You'll be thinner, you'll make more money. Everything will change when you change your inner world and change what you don't want and turn in what you do want. It works with everybody.
And we move from the selfish states that are driven by the hormones of stress to the selfless states where we really want to contribute or we really want to make a difference. And so making an effort to really transform ourselves, I think, is the best way to begin to transform the world.
No matter where you are, no matter what you're going through right now, no matter what you've already gone through, this is your starting point. And I encourage you to begin to look at yourself in an entirely new way.
What I've discovered is that 98% of the world's people are spending 98% of their time on things that don't matter. That is, the average person has no idea what they're doing here, who they are, the real fundamental and sacred purpose of their whole life.
As you open to it, you're removing the blocks that are in your way to abundance, or really to anything you truly desire. And then you arrive where you've been looking for. Of course, your life will change along that path, and you may change what you want. And that too is okay, because that's what makes it fun, the option to change.
But do something that makes someone else or something feel better. That in turn will make you feel better. And I have a saying that goes something like this, that no act of kindness, regardless of how small, is ever wasted.
You tried changing the other people. You try to change your husband, your wife, your mother. It doesn't work. But when you change you, it affects them because of your attitude and your beliefs and your behaviors.
We've got to get back to the understanding of the power of the human body to heal itself. If you know how to support it with foods and air and water and sunshine and walking and loving relationships and finding something that you're passionate about and happy. Those are the principles of health. That's where this comes from. Only your body can heal itself. Only your body heals itself, and most people have forgotten that. Doctors can set bones, but they can't heal them. Only your body heals itself. Self-care is the future. Why? Because it was the brilliant wisdom of the past.
You know, one of the things that I've experienced over the last several years is that whether I'm speaking to a CEO of a company or a prison inmate or a teacher or a janitor, I think that everybody secretly believes in their greatness, that they really believe that they can do a better job in life. And the new science of neuroplasticity and epigenetics gives people permission to begin to create the life that they desire. And that science really has become the contemporary language of mysticism. Science is the language to explain possibility. And I think one of the greatest things that I've learned over the years is that you don't have to be a priest or a nun or an intellect to begin to apply these principles.
Let me tell you a little anecdote. A few days ago, a lady said to me in Los Angeles, my husband died a year ago, and he shared with me a great lesson. On his deathbed, he said to me, come close. I want to tell you something. Listen very carefully. I can only say this once. I don't have much strength left. She said, I'm listening, darling. What is it? He said, remember this always. Each morning, the moment you take your head off the pillow, you have all you need. And that allows me to live the kind of life that I've chosen to live. I only wish I had learned these things when I was much younger. So old, so soon, so smart, so late.